In Genesis 4:8, the Bible tells us that Cain, the older brother with hands full of dirt, came with fruit of the ground as an offering. Picture it. A bunch of carrots, wheat, or whatever I had in the pantry, probably saying, "Hey God, here's some of my harvest, how are you?" Meanwhile, Abel, the shepherd with the smell of sheep, showed off by bringing the best of his firstborn of the flock and of the fat of these. That is, not just any little lamb, but the VIP of his cattle, the juiciest and most tender, as if to say, "Here, Lord, the first and best for you." But here comes the twist. God looked at Abel's offering with shining eyes and Cain's. Well, let's say that he did not give it a like. Why? The Bible doesn't give us a detailed manual, but there are juicy clues. First, Abel offered the firstborn and the fat, terms that scream effort and priority. He gave the first and most valuable, without holding anything back. Cain, on the other hand, only brought fruit of the ground, without mentioning quality or special sacrifice. It's not that the vegetables were bad. Long live the salads. But it seems that Cain came up with something more routine, as if it were a formality. Scholars often point to attitude as well. Hebrews 11:4 says that Abel offered by faith, suggesting that his heart was in tune with God, while Cain, well, was perhaps more in I do and lie mode. So it was not just the what, but the how. Abel gave with devotion, Cain with reluctance, and boom. God, who sees beyond appearances, chose the star lamb over the generic agricultural combo. So, the key difference? Quality, intention, and a touch of extra love. Abel played all his cards. Cain, it seems, only passed through the table. What do you think? Was it the menu or the chef? The Bible leaves us with the perfect cliffhanger to continue debating. Let's go back to Genesis 4:6-7. God, like a good stage manager, sees that Cain is frowning, probably kicking stones and murmuring because his offering did not have divine applause. Then the Creator drops a line worthy of Oscar. Why are you angry? If you do well, won't you be accepted? But if not, sin is at the door, lurking like a tiger, and wants to dominate you. You have to control it. Imagine God as the wise friend who tells you, "Hey, take a deep breath. Don't let rage get the better of you." But Cain, alas, Cain, it seems that he put on his headphones and turned up the volume of his playlist of Nobody Understands Me. Why did he ignore the memo? First, jealousy had already put a blindfold on his eyes. Abel was on the podium with his offering of the year trophy, and Cain, in his corner, ruminating on envy, as if it were old chewing gum. God's warning was clear. Sin is not a tender kitten. It is a beast ready to pounce. But Cain, instead of taming him, opened the door for him and poured him coffee. Experts say this reflects a rebellious heart. Not only was he upset, but he let anger become his boss. Proverbs 16:32 gives us a wink in this regard. Better is he who controls his spirit than he who conquers a city. Cain, clearly, did not read that memo either. And there's more. That sin at the door sounds like choice. God gave him the chance to turn the steering wheel, but Cain stepped on the gas towards disaster. Pride? Stubbornness? Or just a bad day that got out of hand? The fact is that instead of listening and settling accounts with Abel in a talk of brothers, he preferred the dark path. He took him to the countryside and, well, we all know how that walk ended. So why did he ignore the warning? Because sometimes, when envy whispers in your ear, it's easier to blame the world than to look in the mirror. Cain had his stop-or-go moment, and he chose to go on. Straight to the first great plot twist of the Bible. What would you have done with such a warning? Let's go to Genesis 4:10. Cain has already made the big mistake. He invited Abel to take a walk in the countryside. Imagine the suspicious whistle. And the next thing we know, Abel did not return. God, who sees everything, he appears as the supreme detective and blurts out to Cain, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the earth. Blood that speaks." It sounds like epic poetry, but there's much more behind it. First, this is not literal, as if the earth has a megaphone. In the Bible, blood is often a symbol of life. Leviticus 17:11 says that life is in the blood, so when Abel was killed, his severed life cried out for justice. It is as if the earth itself, witness to the crime, became a loudspeaker to say, hey, something horrible happened here. Scholars see it as a cry of divine indignation. God hears the suffering of the innocent, even when humans try to cover it with shovelfuls of dirt. And there's a poetic touch. In Hebrew, cries out. So EQ implies an urgent, almost heart-rending cry, like a victim crying for help. Abel no longer has a voice, but his blood does, and it goes straight to the throne of God. Some say that this also connects with Hebrews 12:24, where the blood of Jesus speaks better than Abel's. But here in Genesis, it is a raw cry of accusation against Cain. The land, which Cain cultivated so proudly, now gives him away. What a delicious irony. Let's go back to the script in Genesis 4. After the VIP fratricide, God tells Cain, you will be a wanderer and a stranger on earth. 4:12. It sounds like an aimless backpacker life, with the earth refusing to give him crops and him looking up at the sky as if to say, really? But then, at 4:17, surprise. Cain knew his wife and had a son named Enoch and built a city and called the name of the city after his son's name, Enoch. What happened here? From nomad condemned to star architect in a single verse. First, let's clear up the punishment. When God says wandering and a stranger, not in Hebrew, it implies instability, not a literal prohibition on settling down. The land was not going to sustain him as a farmer, his star trade, so Cain was in survival mode. But be careful, he was not alone. He had a wife, probably a sister or niece, because Adam and Eve were the only founding couple. And the family grew. Building a city doesn't mean you built skyscrapers with Wi-Fi. At that time, a city, Ir in Hebrew, could be a modest settlement, like a fortified camp to protect against enemies it feared. 4:14. Here comes the juicy touch. Some see this as an act of rebellion. God told him to laze away. And Cain responds, oh, yes? Well, look at my urbanization. It is as if, instead of accepting his fate, he seeks control and security on his own, far from the presence of God. 4:16 says that he went to Nod, east of Eden. Others say that it is not a contradiction. The punishment was more spiritual than physical. Even if he built something, his soul was still restless, scarred by crime. So how did he do it? With human ingenuity, family, and a little challenge. The city of Enoch was his way of saying, I do not give up. Although the title of vagabond was still attached to him as an indelible label. Picture it, Cain, with a hammer in his hand, shouting, take that, fate. Genius or stubborn? It's up to you. But this plot twist leaves us wanting more. What is next in the life of the first urban planning rebel? Here's to the next chapter. Let's go back to Genesis 4:13-15. Cain, after his masterstroke in the field, receives the sentence, you will be a vagabond. The earth will give you crumbs. He, in drama queen mode, responds, my punishment is too much. Anyone will kill me. And God, instead of saying you deserve it, friend, does something unexpected. No, if someone kills you, he will be avenged 7 times. And he put a mark on it so that no one would touch it. What? Did Cain pull out a coupon of divine immunity at the last second? First, let's talk about the context. Cain killed Abel, yes, but this is Genesis, the beginning of humanity. Adam and Eve have already messed up with the apple. And now Cain ups the ante with the first crime. If God removes it right there, what message remains? Some say that the mark is pure mercy. God did not want the story to end in an all die and end. In Exodus 34:6-7, we see that God is merciful and gracious, but also just. Here, Cain pays with a life of exile and guilt, but not with death. It's like a punishment that forces him to carry his mistake instead of escaping on the fast track. Now, the brand, we don't know if it was a cool tattoo, a weird glow, or what, because the Bible doesn't give spoilers. In Hebrew, it is a sign. Ot, something visible that cried out, hands off! This fellow is under divine protection. Why? Probably to stop a wave of revenge. If Abel's family, that is, the future cousins and nephews, hunted him down, the blood cycle would not stop. God nips that in the bud. Vengeance is mine. Deuteronomy 32:35 later confirms this. Cain lives, but marked, as a walking reminder of sin and grace. So why not death? Because God plays the long game. Marking is not a free pass. It is an invisible chain. Imagine Cain, sweating in the sun, looking at that sign and thinking, they don't kill me, but I don't forget either. It is justice with a touch of hope. Even the first murderer had a second chance to reflect. Great or what? This is good biblical drama, leaving us wanting more. What do you think of this turnaround?